Great. And we'll continue to admit people, but I think we'll just go ahead and start to dig in a little bit here. Hello, everybody. Good to have everybody here today. This is one that I've been looking forward to because we sort of went to school on this whole idea of all these directories and review sites. I think I was struck by the fact that several legal tech focused directories and review sites have emerged recently and are starting to develop traction, and they're approaching things in a slightly different way. And I actually want to shout out to the folks at AltFee, Digby and Scott, who've been sharing some of their experiences as they've been moving through filing these things and submissions, and appreciate your guys' help on this as we put this together. What we're going to do today is walk through the various directories after we talk a bit about why you would do this and what the benefits are from doing this, because it is work. It involves work to put it up and keep it current. We'll talk at the very end about how we can help with that, but it is work. And so you may want to be judicious about where you decide to list and think carefully about the effort you put into it. But let me just dig into it now. Here comes Kathy.
Jim,
So
will you be sending or sharing with us the recording and the presentation later on?
Yes, I will. Yes, I will, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
So the big takeaway here is, and this is how I've come to think about this as I've done this for products, you have more websites than you think. And you think about your own website, you invest a lot of time and attention to that website, but in fact, there's probably a dozen or 24 different places where people may find your product or your company even before they find your website. And you can think of those as conduits and leads to your website, but in many cases, it's the last thing they might see about your product or your company. And so really the point of this presentation is to figure out how to take control of those other points of presence you have on the web, how to think about them, how to figure out which ones are most important to you, and how to understand kind of what value they bring to you. It's important to consider your customer journey. When you think about this as a sales initiative, your customer journey involves, according to folks who studied this, 30% of the time they spend evaluating products will be through independent research. Of course, they're going to be all over the web looking for reviews in particular of your products. More than 80% of people who are shopping for software are going to want to check out reviews. And it makes perfect sense. It's like anything else. I just bought a washer dryer and I started at Wirecutter and moved through Amazon reviews until I felt like I had enough information. The same thing applies in software buying. And so getting them to the point where they're prepared to buy your product or even take a demo of it may involve several points of contact you have with them through both your own website, microsites, email, whatever your campaigns are, but also these points where your product or company may be featured. So we're going to walk through those today because ultimately you must be present to win. And that's the other theme of this workshop is you're not present unless you're in all those places that customers may be looking for your product or your company. So let's talk about the benefits of being listed on these places. First of all, it's simple, it's leads, right? We all want as many leads as we can handle. We want them to come in as efficiently and cheaply as possible. So the sites we're going to talk about today are potential sources of leads. And in just about every case, not every one, but just about every case, there's a free listing available, just waiting for you to provide information to. In some cases, we'll talk about some sites that actually have pre-crawled and found your information and your product, and you're already listed, and you may not even have ever seen it. And so they still give you the ability to claim that listing, build out the information you think is relevant to buyers, and make it your own, if you will. So leads, clearly a very important part of this. And SEO is also important too. And that probably has two dimensions. So as we go through these sites, I'll share with you some information about the SEO value of each of those sites, in the sense that authoritative websites that point to your website can enhance your SEO. Now, when I find someone who really can explain to me quantitatively what that means, we'll have a whole workshop about that, because SEO is a big mystery. It gets more and more mysterious. Search is personalized. No one really understands Google. But the point is, having authoritative sites point to your site is a good thing. But I think even more importantly is these authoritative sites are in many cases likely to appear in search results before your website appears in search results in some cases. And so those websites, again, it's not just about boosting your own SEO, it's about taking advantage of the authority they have to appear in search results. When someone's searching for contract lifecycle management, what are the chances that your product might show up? Not because of your own website, but because it appears on a listing site like the ones we're going to talk about. And then finally, I think engagement is a very important part of this. And when I say engagement in the context of directory and review sites, I mean mostly reviews. Getting people to come, provide a review of your site, and engage with you and give you an opportunity to identify them, reach out to them, and start to build community around your product. We will see as we go through the different sites that they're at various levels of adoption of reviews. So not all these sites have reviews on them, but everyone that I talked to said, if we don't have it, it's coming soon, because everybody understands the critical nature of reviews in the software buying process. And so you can watch for that to be a growing theme among these sites. So these are the three reasons why it's worthwhile to look at these sites and think about them. Now let's talk about the takeaway for you, which is really three simple messages. Get listed, drive reviews, recruit reviews, and keep your listings fresh. We'll talk about how that works with news. We'll talk about how that works with some of the social features of these sites. But most importantly, when your product's updated, update your listing, right? Make sure that you are presenting your product as thoroughly and comprehensively on these websites as you do on your own, to the extent you can within the parameters of each site. So those are the three takeaways. Those are the three things that I'd recommend people focus on as they think about this. Now let's talk about the sites themselves. We're going to talk about 4 different categories of review and directory sites. The generic sites, and I want to point out here that there are many, many more of these. They're not focused on legal tech, but they are incredibly important places that you want to consider having your product listed, because you will find that the ones I'm showing you right now have the most authority, the most ability to appear in search results, and in most cases, the most comprehensive listings. There's some exceptions to that we'll talk about, but in general, Capterra, G2, these folks have been at this for decades. They are very big, sophisticated platforms. They want to sell you a whole bunch of additional services, which you may or may not need at this point in your company's development, but they are very important places to be, because mostly those are the sites where the reviews are really happening right now. Then we have a whole set of dedicated legal sites that are just focused on companies that do legal tech related stuff. And you can see here, I'll go through each of these and you'll get a sense of them, but they are dedicated to legal. So legal ops buyers, people who are in legal tech, they're going to gravitate toward these sites. And the reason is you're going to find that the parameters and the listing frameworks will be more attentive to the stuff that matters to legal tech. And we'll talk about that as we go through each of these. Then we have there's 2 different reviews and directory sites that are focused only on small law firm needs. We won't spend a huge amount of time on these, but they're pretty interesting actually for a couple reasons. If your product is something that you think small law firms and solo practitioners and folks like that should be interested in, then you should definitely consider these sites. And we'll talk about how these work in more detail. And then finally, I just wanted to include, there's a whole bunch of what I would call startup or socially related sites that are focused on the startup community. And they're not just important for your company's presence, they're also important for hiring, and they're important for just being in the ecosystem. There's more of these too. We're not going to talk today about Twitter or Facebook or some of the more generic social platforms. We're just going to focus in on the ones that are focused on startups, assuming that's where you're coming from. So let's jump in. And this, I think I wanted this at the beginning because it's super important. And LinkedIn provides a tremendous opportunity to showcase your company and product. Just about everybody, I think, already has a LinkedIn company page of some kind, and they've invested, some level of effort into that. This is not that. Really, this is a page that is just about your product. It appears within your company page as a tab in LinkedIn, but it does some really interesting specific stuff for products. So who are the audiences for this? And I'll go through for each of these sites, who you're trying to reach, who you're likely to reach, how powerful that reach is going to be, and then what are some of the important features that these sites allow you to, that give you a canvas on which to tell the story of your product. So in LinkedIn's case, this is completely free, right? It's completely free. You can attach it to your LinkedIn company page at any time. You just got to go in and submit it. It takes review. It used to be 3 or 4 weeks of review. I'm told recently people are getting through the process in a couple of days. And they've added some things recently that I wasn't aware of until this morning that are pretty exciting. The ability to feature customers, the ability to solicit through LinkedIn recommendations for your product, which will appear on this page as well. They do a decent job trying to find similar products. That's algorithmic, so they can present you in context of other companies. And remember, and this will be a theme throughout this whole workshop, these are very important promotional areas. Not so much, I mean, it's not great that your competitors are showing in your page. It's great that you're going to show on your competitor's page. And so a lot of the care and tending you need to put into these listings has to do with being in the right category, naming the right competitors, making sure that your keywords and your approach will bring your company into your competitor's web page, the way this is shown here on the Clio page. You can do a custom CTA, a call to action that is customized on LinkedIn. You can mention similar products. And then something that's kind of neat that was pointed out to me is now every product has become a skill in LinkedIn. And so people who are adept in your product can actually list that as their skill and something that they do specially. Again, LinkedIn is going to leverage their unique social authority and social platform to make these listings as robust as they can.
So Jim, if I could insert a question.
Yeah.
That's a really cool feature, this ability for users to actually alert people that they know the skills required to run your software. So that means the company could actively recruit all of their users to post that on LinkedIn as a skill. It'd be good for the user and good for just basically internal LinkedIn traffic, I would assume. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because that again becomes a point of presence for you across all these different profiles that people have, right? And you could be completely dedicated to LinkedIn potentially as your only channel if you took advantage of all the different facets that they have within the network. And these product pages, I think, are really, really important.
And one of the questions that came in, Jim, you may not have seen it in the chat, that LinkedIn products pages will only work with products. This is from Kathy. Not services. So if you're delivering a service, figure out how to productize it. Sounds like a great suggestion.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. It'd be interesting to see how much close attention they pay to that as they go through. So anyway, top recommendation is get a LinkedIn product page, fill out your LinkedIn page. And one thing that people often forget is your profile pages, and those for at least your founding team, they need to be attended to. You need to think about how that's presented, because when the buyer's going through, these are all the places they're going to see links. These are all the different elements of your overall presence on LinkedIn that you should be thinking about. So next up is Capterra. We're going to talk about Capterra and G2 kind of together. I mean, they're owned by the same company. Gartner owns everything. They are, as I said earlier, a very mature product, very mature set of marketing tools that are available and that are connected to this. You can put video in, it does detailed pricing, detailed comparisons between products. This is one where you can choose 5 products and see a programmed comparison between those products. And I think most of the review activity that I've seen around legal tech products has been on these platforms. So you're more likely to get that, that kind of activity happening here. And then there's a million things you can buy on top. And I haven't studied that nearly as hard, but they'll help you identify buyers directly. They'll connect up through integrations to your CRM. They'll give you advanced analytics. And there's an RFP process in many cases. There's just a ton of things. Now, I'm not suggesting that companies at the early stage should necessarily be investing in that. But I do think you should start with a basic listing here. And that's not going to cost you anything. It's going to give you presence on Capterra, and it's going to give you an opportunity to understand how it might work for you as a long-term platform that you might decide later to invest in. And look at that domain rating. I mean, here they are. They're in the 90s, and they're going to show up in search a lot. And if you look, interestingly, at the big players in legal tech, the Clios, the Evisorts, AgileOps, these guys, you will find them listed on almost every single one of the sites we're talking today. And you'll find that in some cases, like you see Ironclad here, they've really invested in this listing. I mean, this is an important listing to them. They've recruited people to post reviews. They've paid for premium elements. And that is, I think, as much as anything, a good lesson for earlier stage companies to get in this game as soon as you can. G2, very similar, very, very similar. You can see the reviews here. You can see that it's just about the same lineup. But let me just do something fun here. I noticed that G2 does one of their automated comparisons against Capterra. These are two companies that are owned by the same parent, right? And in this case, you had 410 reviews on G2 and 84 reviews total on Capterra. And you see that Capterra really appeals more to small business buyers than mid-market buyers. So if your segmentation includes those kind of distinctions, then G2 might end up being better for you in the mid-market, and Capterra might be better at the much smaller end of the market. But it's kind of funny that the rating is so much higher for G2, even though the products are very, very, very similar. So if you're deciding you are going to invest in some of the premium elements of this, you might want to think carefully about which one you would invest in, depending upon who your target market is. It's kind of funny too that Capterra won't let you see any direct reviews of them. They're not listed as a product on Capterra. G2 lists themselves as a product and allows this to happen. So it's kind of goofy. All right, now we're moving into legal tech focus. And here's the sort of the big one for the legal tech focused directories and review sites. And this is Theorem. You may not have come across Theorem directly, in part because it is more or less a closed environment. People pay to, vendors pay to be listed. And in fact, other users pay to have access to it. Their strategy is different. They are actually creating white label versions of their directory that are in front of your buyers through organizations like Clock and ILTA. That's a big deal. So if you're selling into corporate legal, if that's your main market, and particularly selling into more mature companies who maybe have a legal ops function, you would want to be in front of the folks who are at Clock. And this is a relatively recent development of Clock, using the white label version of Theorem, but that community is tight and active and drives purchase behavior. And if you want to be in the directory that's in front of those buyers, if corporate legal is your target. Very, very full featured site. You can see up here, there's a whole bunch of different elements. Some of these very legal tech focused, having a security tab, talking about integrations in more detail and how those work, setting up comparisons. So among the legal tech players, this is the most full featured site. It's not going to drive your SEO, not until or unless they ever open up to public viewing. It's not going to drive your SEO, but it is going to put you right in front of a set of buyers that would be, a little hard to reach otherwise. So if they're coming into the Clock directory, Clock version of Theorem, and they're searching for, let's say contract management software again, you're going to want to be present in that result. And the reviews and community that get built around that Clock Theorem version of the directory, those are going to be important. Those are going to be important. And I've seen Clock stuff up close in terms of how active that community is. And it's pretty powerful. So that would be the Theorem. And then we have Legal Tech Hub, which is a relatively, been around for a while, but they've recently announced that they're beefing up their service. They're more of an editorial focus. And I talked with the folks who run that last week, and they want to be more of a high-end, I get this impression anyway, they want to be more of a high-end Gartner And I think they're going to appeal more to corporate buyers who are larger and law firm buyers that are larger. The reach and authority is kind of in the middle, I would say, but they have a really good set of detailed categories, and the premium offerings that they have are enhancing your listing with video and things like that, having a custom call to action, being able to own your category. So whenever someone is browsing contract management, they will see your product every single time listed as a solution, and doing the same thing in comparisons and placements. So this is one to watch. And I think they don't have reviews yet. And you may find that you already have a listing on Legal Tech Hub because they were one of the companies that went ahead and did a scrape to try to find as many legal tech companies as they can. And they created stub listings in the directory. Sometimes those stub listings aren't that great. In fact, some are cryptic and weird, and you might want to just take a look to see, if you haven't already, to see if you are listed on Legal Tech Hub, because some of the squibs that they created, were definitely not what you want your product to appear like. So let's go to one more here. Law Next, the other competitor. This comes out of Bob Ambrogi, who you probably have read about. He's a very active legal tech columnist. The reason they have a decent domain rating here at 67 is because he's been blogging about this stuff for years, and he's now decided to make a business out of the directory. Now, what they're really selling here at Law Next, I should go back for a second, actually. On the pricing, each of these is about $1,000 for an enhanced listing annually. There's some slight differences, but it's about $1,000 for an enhanced listing. In this case, what they are selling that is perhaps more interesting than the advanced listing is for $4,700, you can have a structured canned demo and discussion with Bob and your product. And it's not a review. It's not a, hey, we're going to kick the tires on this thing. It's more of a, Bob helps you move through a product demo and create, a short video, which you can use anywhere, including on Law Next. And that becomes an important piece of collateral for you, which is really helpful. So if you were looking at this one, number one, definitely want to get a listing here for sure. And number two, you want to explore whether, if you're going ahead and making some demonstration videos and things as part of your collateral, whether you would want to do that to get the extra authority that Bob brings to the process, which is considerable. He's very well regarded, and he's a player in that. So that could be something you want to think about as well in the long run, that guided demo video. Then Legal.io is another one. This is one where their business model is really about hiring, but they have a tech directory to go with that. And it's probably not the deepest one out there, but it's, as far as I can tell, it doesn't cost anything. There's no form here just to fill out and submit your whole entry. You kind of have to enter into a dialogue with them to get that done. But it looks like a pretty good, setup. It looks nice. You can put the collateral in, the video and screenshots that you want. Pretty good featured. And, by virtue of, I guess, their talent business, they've got a pretty decent rating. So this is another one on a legal focus side that is worth your time. Also, you shouldn't think about this just in a vacuum. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about this in more detail when it comes to Crunchbase and folks like that. But your audience for these listings is not just vendors. It's also, people who are looking for a job, right? Who are looking who want to understand your product in the context of a job search. And that's another reason to be on these sites that are hybrid hiring and product sites. Oric Observatory is kind of a funny one. I think this is something that Oric built mostly for their clients and mostly to showcase the fact that they really do, and I can tell you this firsthand, they really do invest a lot of time and effort in understanding and exploring the universe of legal tech tools. They do that in part for their own practice. They do that in part to help convince their clients, their legal clients, that they're on the ball and they're very tech forward. And so they have this little tool called the Observatory that allows you to get some very simplified information about different products. So again, this is not one that's going to make or break you, but they do have a really good domain rating, and it's not a bad idea to be present in this directory too. And it's pretty easy because there's not much collateral, honestly. And then this is the Stanford, this is the Stanford Tech Index. I'm not quite sure how current it is. I mean, Stanford as a domain, as you can see, is highly authoritative, right? So that might be reason alone to want to be present there. You can see the listing here is not, it's not that in depth, and I would say if you just look at related companies here, that's kind of a total fail. I mean, none of those companies are related to what Ironclad does. So this is not, a great deep directory that a buyer is going to use to research your product, but it might bring you a couple of hits. You never know, right? And it's easy to file. Now we're moving into that category of legal tech that is for smaller firms only, mostly. And the Lawyerist is actually a fascinating example. The Lawyerist is really a content play around what small and medium-sized law firms need to make a big business out of their legal practice. As part of that, they have a pretty deep set of detailed reviews about software products relevant to small law firms. And they do a really nice job. I mean, it's a combination review site and promotional site. They kind of hit all the buttons here. They've got good reviews. They're well populated. You can see here they have a really detailed, but the most detailed feature comparison that I've seen in these directories. The opportunity to put in these kinds of testimonials, which are just tremendous, right? And this is another site where it's kind of independent, it's kind of not independent. I mean, if you purchase a promotional package for your product here, you're going to have a lot of influence over what's on this page. But I will point out that right here, you can see there's a negative review. Right? Craig said this product is flawed, right? So there is some authority and authenticity to it. But I do think that with some affirmative management, you can make this kind of page into something really, really powerful for sales. If again, you're selling into the small law firm type market. Lumos is a new entrant, and I've been corresponding with them a little bit. They have the same kind of focus as the Lawyerist, but their editorial focus is making detailed demo videos that are reviews. And so it's an editorial focus. They don't have as comprehensive a set of listings as some of the others, but they're pretty good. They're not going to bring you much in the way of SEO because as you can see, they're just getting started. So they barely even register in terms of authority. The interesting thing about Lumos, I think, is their pricing model. So if you set up an account with them and you set up a vendor presence on Lumos, the first 10 clicks that come to you from that listing are free. And then after that, you pay something between $10 and $20. I'm not sure how they set that price for each click. And $10 to $20 a click is it's not crazy relative to what you'd pay on LinkedIn ads or Google ads or something like that. Not at all crazy, but interesting model where you can essentially try it out, hopefully get a lead or two, be convinced of the benefit of it, and then start to invest in it. And in that sense, there's no risk to it. You have a listing here and maybe you'll get 10 clicks, that'll be terrific. And then you can make a decision later. You don't have to decide right now whether to be a premium customer. But I find that kind of intriguing and certainly worth a free listing. Now we're going to move into the last category. And these are the ones that I'd characterize as, they're in some ways generic. They're not so much about your product. They're more about your company and your team. And Crunchbase obviously is the big dog here. There are a lot of automated SWIB pages that have been created, without any kind of input from the company. So I think this is another one you want to take control of. Presumably you're in this workshop because you're an early stage company that's going to need capital either immediately or at some point. You need to be in Crunchbase. I mean, Crunchbase is essentially the Bible or the almanac or whatever you want to call it for the startup universe. And that data that they collect through the efforts of people, curating their postings, that data they collect flows out not just through the Crunchbase site, which, as you can see, has incredibly high authority, but also through APIs. Venture capital firms consume this via API. This data is just kind of this organism of data that is in Crunchbase, gets used in a million different ways. You need to be present in this, and you need to take control of your profile and make sure that news is flowing in correctly. Make sure your funding information is up to date and your investor information is up to date. And this is also one where your individual profile, just like we're going to talk about AngelList in a second, your individual profile is necessary. So you're going to have to spend a little bit of time making sure that your personal profile is up to speed, because that's going to be an important part of your listing here. I think when we did a survey of the participants in our workshops and how many of them had profiles on these various sites, Crunchbase, I think, was the one that, in addition to LinkedIn, that almost everybody had a listing, right? But when you go a little deeper, you'll find that some of the listings are very incomplete. They don't have, for example, the people connected, or they don't have anything about financing activity. Those need to be filled out, and this is one that you need to attend to. They don't sell premium products, as far as I can tell, for vendors in the capacity as a vendor. What they do is they give you help in data about funding. They allow you to have investor research and buy investor research to try to find prospective funding sources and so forth. Their business model is not around your product. It's really around their business model is getting investors and big companies to pay for the data that is self-curated by the smaller companies. So this is a top recommendation to be on this. And then AngelList is a little more social. It's a little more oriented toward hiring. Again, it's not going to have much focus on your product. It's really going to be focused on your investment history and your hiring. And you might as well have a listing there as well, just because they have pretty good SEO and they're going to show up in some searches. And whether it's talent or investors, it's a good idea to be here as well. And the last one I think we're going to talk about is Legal Geek, which is kind of a it's really more of a social site. It comes out of the UK, but they have conferences that are very interesting, and it's a really neat community. They have a page here which just shows the startup universe that they're aware of. It's mostly very small companies, and they have decent authority here. But the features are sort of limited. You can upload a video, you can put your funding history in, and this is where you're going to be looking for different sources of financing. You just want to be present and available informationally to folks who might be considering investing in legal tech or who are in legal tech. So a little bit like Crunchbase, but for legal tech, you just got to be there. There's no reason not to be. It's a free listing. Now let's talk a little bit now about some precise recommendations for how to go about your listings. And Lee, feel free to interrupt me on these too, on anything you've got questions on. It makes a lot of sense to invest in video. Video is at the heart of many of these listing frameworks, and it's going to be the most powerful element you have to communicate your story within the context of that. Hopefully, you've already got a video on your own website that is current for your product, and it's just a matter of uploading that there, or in many cases, all you have to do is add a link to a YouTube or Vimeo video endpoint, and you're in business, right? And then the videos can be framed in there and shown. So if you're going to do this, it's worth investing in video. And I think we could have a whole separate workshop on the importance of that, but you should be having videos of your product anyway, even if that's a Loom video you put together in 3 hours. That's somebody walking through the product and you edit it down to 3 minutes. That's a really good idea, right? That's something you should do, and that's something that you can leverage through these sites.
Hey, Jim, to get your video to be of appropriate level of professionalism, what's the price range? Because you and I talked, some of these prices were lower than I had anticipated to get a decent video produced.
Yeah, well, the cheapest way to do it is just to do it yourself with a Loom account. So you've got a nice shining face in the corner and you're walking through it. the way I've done it in the past is I just blah, 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 ad hoc, and then go back and take, 30 minutes and edit it down to 3, right? The second level would be doing a script for that. That's actually something we help with, but you do a script for the video and do it a little more structured yourself. And the next level would be if you needed to do something fancy in terms of the screenshots or animation. I've been able to get that put together pretty cheaply, through Upwork with folks overseas, to where, I was investing maybe $300 or $400 total in a 3-minute video, but there's a lot of elbow grease or a lot of work in that. If you're going to outsource this completely and get somebody to do it soup to nuts, you're probably looking at $5,000 or something like that. My preference is really where I would land as a startup, and where I have landed is to work really hard on the script, get help on the script, and then read that script as part of a demo into Loom or some other platform like that, and then edit it down. Because this is going to have to be sustainable. I mean, your product's going to update. You're going to have to update that video soon enough, right? So if you invest $5,000 in it and it's obsolete in 3 months, it's probably not the best use of money. So I believe my answer is to do your script, take time on the script, and get help on the script if you need it, and then just produce it yourself.
Okay. And Jason says Camtasia is another good tool as well.
Oh yeah, Camtasia is great. Camtasia is great. Keep it up to date. I think that's one of our big messages here is keeping this up to date is critical. Not only because you want the latest information in front of your customers, but also because those updates, I think, help you algorithmically in terms of how you place within the website and how you place with Google. Fresh pages rate better, generally speaking. And so keep these pages fresh and just think to yourself, okay, if I'm updating my website because of a new feature or something, I got to update all my websites, which is to say my website and the 13 other websites we're talking about today. Category, we mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the categories and the competitors are super important to where you appear, and appearing on your competitors' pages is an important benefit. So you will find as you go through the categories that you may not land in a particular category. I was talking to a company the other day that said, we're a new category. And so they were corresponding with the directory to try to get them to create a new category that they could be placed into, but that's going to be an uphill battle in some cases. And so consider those categories carefully and learn from competitive listings. When we're engaged by a client to, and I'll talk in a second how that works. When we're engaged by a client to put together their listing here, first thing I do is figure out what the competitors are doing, because they've already thought about this, right? And so what buttons are they pushing with their listing? What collateral have they created? And how can I learn from that? Monitor reviews. Most of the sites that have reviews, they're probably going to let you know when there's a new review, but monitoring for those and even monitoring for your competitors' reviews can be very instructional as well, very important. Here's a quick tip. These sites don't have great analytics, with the exceptions of the big guys. The big guys have amazing analytics, the G2s, the Capteras. They'll actually sell you the ability to identify the people who came to your page, right? That's the ultimate analytics. But in the other sites, they're in an earlier stage of adoption. So one simple trick is simply to put a parameter on each of your links in those sites, like $refer equals Crunchbase or whatever. So that at least when you look at your analytics and you see inbound URLs and inbound clicks, you can at least organize those based upon where they came from and start to understand your investment in these various sites and who's producing and who's not, right? Because in the end, we want to be in the position that, say, Lumos was going to put us in, which is, I know exactly what it's going to cost me, for another click. And tracking the URLs that are coming in and tracking the source of the referral is the beginning of wisdom for, making smart decisions about where you're going to invest your time and effort. Provide an offer. Some of these sites have the ability to provide a special offer to your customers or your prospect just because they found you there, and take advantage of that. because if you provide an offer that is unique to that directory or review site, again, I'll bet you that algorithmically you're going to appear more in searches. You're going to be closer to that site, and so play the game they want you to play. Make the offer and do something special like 20% off, or tell us here's a referral code. Those sorts of things I think can be effective. It's also great for the customer, right? In their journey, everybody wants to feel like they're getting a good deal, right? So give them an offer. You're more likely to get a click. And finally, one more tip. I suggest listing wherever you can. Think about your product atomically. You've got your core product. Maybe you have an integration of your product that works in Slack or works in Microsoft Word or something. Consider listing that separately as a separate product in all these places. There's no reason not to. And in fact, it is a separate product when you think about the customer journey. Hey, I'm looking for something that will do this for me in Word. Okay, I'm going to find that more easily if there's a separate product listing for the Word integration of product XYZ. And so don't be afraid to create multiple listings when you have products that are arguably distinct. Let me stop there real quick for any questions before I talk about the next segment.
Well, one quick thing, Jim, there's not a box here, but you mentioned the importance of recruiting reviewers to your site as a way of keeping things up to date. So
yeah, that's a good point. That should be a box on here. And as I said, LinkedIn product pages are cool because they actually build that in. The recruiting of the recommendation is built into LinkedIn product. In other cases, you'll need a little mini campaign, which is to say, round up if you have to cut customer success representatives, or if you have whoever else is on the front line, figure out who is the happiest with your product and reach out to them directly, send them a link. Don't be shy. They don't want more work to do, but if you can say, hey, give them some language even, that's always worked pretty well for me when I'm looking for someone to either put a testimonial on my website. I just write it for them. I think about their use case. I think, okay, what have they liked about the product? And just give them 2 sentences. And then it becomes easier for them to follow through. Your happy customers are going to want to do this for you. They want to see you succeed. They want to see you survive. And so don't be afraid to reach out to them and recruit these reviews, because that's really what's going to give this whole program juice. All right, so here's the promotional part. I just wanted to outline we're starting to do this as kind of a side hustle. We've got 4, and Lee, who is the expert in tiered pricing, as you guys know from our prior workshops, has encouraged us to show this as a tiered pricing model. So the first thing is what's free. It's usually $100, but because you guys came to the workshop, we're going to give you each the opportunity to have this data room we've set up, and I'll show you in just a second what that looks like, which is the ultimate organizational tool for this activity. And it's an annotated, it's full of instructions. It's really your guide to getting this done. That's the first level. The second level is, because we've now set up facilities and people offshore who can actually submit the listings, update the listings over time, we're offering that as a simple little service that you put the information in the data room, and then whenever you want, we'll submit it to the sites, we'll update it on the sites, and you'll know that all the different listings are always consistent and are always in sync. And you'll also have a source of truth for that information that you and the team can use as a reference point. So if you just want someone to take care of the manual labor in listing, we were delighted to do that. The next level is we'll make the listings for you, which is to say we'll go to your website, we'll go to all the collateral you have, we'll share a drive with us with screenshots or whatever you might have, and we'll actually create the listings according to best practices and about what we think works on these various places. And then, of course, we'll keep them up to date. You can update them as often as you want, and you'll know, again, that if everything is consistent, and we'll apply our marketing expertise to make these listings productive as possible. And then the final level, this is the Cadillac, is everything above plus will help you figure out your strategy for for upgrading to paid promotion on those sites. We'll do your video script for you. We'll make sure your team profiles are in order. We'll monitor the competition and their listings as well. And then to the extent possible, we'll get this connected up to your analytics. As these sites start to build in more analytics features, we'll help you do that. And again, you can see the pricing range. This is all for a year, unlimited updates. And that's how we can help you make this a little bit easier. We're happy to consult with you if you're kind of thinking, well, do I need this or not? Just set up a call, grab a time on the calendar. We'd love to talk to you about how you think about this and what your needs are, and see if it's something it's a good fit for you. This is what the data room looks like. If you would like one of these data rooms, you can see here the way this works is you enter the information just one time, and it replicates in all the places that it's common across the different directories. It also includes the instructions and links and everything you'd need to get going. The idea here is you can prepare all the collateral and upload all the collateral without ever visiting any of these sites. We've pulled all the information into one smart sheet, so you can look at the categories, you can look at all the choices you have within this sheet. Anybody in this call who wants this to start with, just reach out to me after the call and I will provision one of these for you, and you can be off and running and check it out. And if down the road you decide it's too much trouble, come let me know and we can take over the process of keeping the stuff current for you, and whatever. But this is something we're more or less giving away just to get people moving on this, because I'm really passionate about it. I think this whole area is a missed opportunity for so many startups. And we went through the process. We analyzed all of the companies who come to one of our workshops, about 100 companies, and actually looked at where they're listed. And it's a sorry state of affairs, I would say. I think it's important for people to pay attention to this. And again, it's your website. It's just not under your control yet. And that's what we want to help you take care of. So any further questions? And if people want to share any experiences they've had on these sites, and
well, Jim, I have just sort of, while we have everyone here and can easily chat with them, I just like to maybe poll people of, it's a free listing, it's a way of getting started. Just either a thumbs up or just a yes or something like that in the chat if it's something that, it seems like worth looking into. Just feel free to type away. So I'm interested because this, we're really looking at, Jim mentioned the pricing model for this, is that, is it effective to start with a free listing, or do we have a higher price and just go and more actively market one-on-one with these companies? It's kind of a function of is this webinar with a free listing the right approach, or do we started at $500 and then we can afford the marketing cost to actually go out and directly approach people? So any thoughts on that would be appreciated.
Lee, this is Kathy. I would just add, to answer from my perspective that question. I think you're just like any other startup. It's it's kind of chicken and egg of needing revenue to fuel the marketing budget or the marketing opportunities. So I think I think it's a great value. I think it's a product that's worthwhile. And I think that it's not only valid for young companies and startups who don't have a great budget, but it's also a viable opportunity for existing companies that may be not prioritizing this or not spending a lot of time on it. So I think you need, the job here is to get the word out a little bit broader. I mean, I mentioned in the chat, I'll be happy to refer my clients over. I think it's excellent. And I would like to, as these opportunities include, evolve, I think, it's an ever-changing list. Obviously, one that I'm closely involved with is the above the law non-event buyer's guides and product directory, and we'll have some news coming out on that on the directory piece specifically. There will be a free listing model in addition to the buyer's guides, but much like Bob Ambrosie's product. This will have a written, the buyer's guide product reviews have a written product review component, as Jim knows from his Joinder days, and that can be used directly as a piece of marketing. So I think
I want to amplify that point, and this does all tie together with that, because you'll see some of the more advanced sites, the Theorems, the G2s, the Capterra, that collateral is a core part of your listing, their ability to download that collateral. And what Kathy's talking about is a product review. It's a friendly product review, right? But it's thorough and it's real and it's accurate. And it's not a hater. It's somebody who's taken the time to go through it and write about it and organize their thoughts about it. We paid for that at Joinder. I thought that was one of the best most productive pieces of collateral that we had, because it number one, it's got a great brand on it that they already know, and secondly, it goes through it thoroughly, so they feel like they're not reading a piece of marketing collateral. They feel like they're reading something independent, and it is independent. It's not it's not totally arm's length, but it's independent enough and branded in a way that I think can be quite compelling. And so think about that as part of this. Really, you got to step back from this whole process and say, what's my overall budget? And I would suggest in Maslow's pyramid here that getting listed is like really important. Like however you do that, whether you get help doing it or whether you do it yourself, get listed, right, in all the right places. And then start to think about the collateral that backs that up. And that's the video, that's the product review, that's really nice versions of the screenshots, and maybe that's some professional copywriting for the listings, and work that all out, and then measure, right? And make an investment, measure, see where the traffic's coming from, see what's working in your sales calls, and then double down on those things. But thank you, Kathy, for that comment.
Yeah, great comment, Kathy.
And if I can make one other comment, the only thing I would say is, at your pricing level, how we value our time. If you're spending an hour a month thinking about this, or what is your time worth to have somebody who knows what they're doing do this for you and do it right? And you could be spending that time, you can invest that time in something completely different, and where your time is better spent. So
that's a great point, Kathy. Can you go back to the pricing slide, Jim, just to show that?
Yeah.
This is what I was trying to compute. Let's say at the auto list level, it's about $100 a month. It's 13 sites and probably growing, so it's less than $10 a site. And it's almost impossible, I think, for anyone in a do-it-yourself way to come close to matching that value. And if you get 1 lead, 2 leads from it, I mean, the price of these B2B legal software solutions, you've probably funded this pretty easily. So
I'll give you some feedback. Hi, Jim. How you doing, dude?
Hey, Jason. Hi.
Hey, bud. So I've actually did Autologics, Jim. If you weren't aware, I'm no longer there. But this is ideal for a company like Autologics. For those that are on the call, is the example. 1.5 million ARR sterling ARR company trying to build a global footprint. And you're looking at the guy that was head of sales, full stop, other than the CEO. And they've got one marketing guy who's absolutely run off his feet. And every time we looked at these sites, it was always like, how the hell are we ever going to maintain this, operationalize this at this stage? So, and that's a tightly run budget company, and $1,000 a year. I'd say the $1,000 a year is a super value. I would just need to know more about turnkey to know whether extra 2K is anyways, I'm no longer there, but like that is an example of a company right in the wheelhouse for this type of service.
That's great. Well, thank you, Jason. And everybody, any other input you might have that we don't have time for here, please fire it over. I also just want to remind you, Lee and I are always available for a consult, whatever you're looking at, whether it's funding, hiring, whatever your challenge is right now, let us know. This is just part of what we do. And with that, if there's any other questions, otherwise we'll, as they say, take an early arrival.
So the only thing people have to do, Jim, is send an email to you and you'll provision them with the data room. So.
And they'll get a data room and all the instructions, and that's kind of a no-brainer. Just hit me up and it will be yours.
Sounds good.
All right, folks. Thanks, everybody. And have a terrific
Thank you.
rest of your day.
Ciao.